Some people don't raise their voice when they try to diminish others. They don't argue loudly or insult directly. Instead, they speak calmly. They smile. Their words sound reasonable, even polite. And yet, after the interaction ends, something feels off. You replay the conversation in your mind, searching for what exactly went wrong. Nothing obvious was said, nothing overtly cruel happened, and still you walk away feeling smaller, less certain, quietly unsettled. This experience is far more common than most people realize, and it is rarely accidental. People who habitually put others down often don't look hostile on the surface. In fact, many of them appear confident, competent, and socially skilled. They may be respected at work, admired in social circles, or perceived as strong personalities. But what makes this behavior so confusing is that it hides behind subtlety, a casual remark about your idea, a joke that lands just a little too sharp, a reminder of your past mistake brought up innocently. Each comment on its own feels harmless. Together, they form a pattern, and your body notices the pattern before your mind does. What you experience in these moments is not weakness or oversensitivity, it's awareness. Your nervous system recognizes a quiet power shift. Something was taken from you emotionally, even if nothing obvious occurred on the surface. This is how the behavior usually begins, not with cruelty, but with quiet erosion. Psychologically speaking, people who consistently put others down are rarely motivated by genuine confidence. True confidence does not need comparison. It does not need dominance. What drives this behavior is something far more fragile, insecurity that learned how to disguise itself as strength. Somewhere along the way, often early in life, these individuals absorbed a painful message. Being themselves was not enough to feel safe. For some people, that message leads to withdrawal. They become quiet, cautious, eager to please. For others, it leads to overachievement. And for a particular group, it leads to subtle dominance. They learn that the fastest way to feel stable is not to build themselves up internally, but to lower someone else just enough to feel taller by comparison. This adaptation may have helped them survive emotionally at one point, but survival strategies, when carried into adulthood, often become patterns that hurt others. At its core, this behavior is not about you. It is about regulation. Putting others down becomes a way to manage inner chaos. In moments where insecurity flares up, where self-doubt threatens to surface, diminishing someone else provides brief relief. For a moment, they feel grounded. For a moment, the internal noise quiets. But because the relief is external, it never lasts. So the behavior repeats. If you look beneath the surface, what you often find is fear. Fear of being overlooked. Fear of being exposed. Fear of being ordinary, invisible, or replaceable. For these individuals, self-worth is not something that grows internally. It is something measured externally. They constantly scan their environment, assessing where they stand in relation to others, and the quickest way to feel above is to make someone else feel below.
This mindset often develops in environments where comparison was constant. Homes where praise was conditional, schools where worth was ranked, families where love felt competitive instead of secure. When a child grows up feeling evaluated rather than understood, they don't learn self-acceptance. They learn positioning. They learn how to perform value instead of embody it. That lesson doesn't disappear in adulthood. It simply becomes more sophisticated. As adults, these individuals often mask their need for dominance as honesty. I'm just being real. I'm just telling the truth. I'm just trying to help you improve. But real honesty does not shrink people, and genuine help does not leave you feeling ashamed. When feedback consistently leaves you doubting yourself rather than clearer, something else is happening. What's occurring psychologically is a quiet power exchange. By pointing out someone else's flaw, they momentarily escape their own. By highlighting someone else's weakness, they distract from their vulnerability. It's a form of emotional displacement. The discomfort they cannot tolerate internally is redirected outward. Because the relief is temporary, the behavior becomes repetitive. The comments return. The subtle jabs continue. The comparisons never stop. This is why these interactions feel draining. You are unknowingly participating in someone else's emotional regulation system. Your self-doubt becomes their relief. Your hesitation becomes their reassurance. And over time, This has consequences. People who are repeatedly put down begin to second-guess themselves. They hesitate before speaking. They soften their opinions. They pre-edit their thoughts to avoid judgment. Slowly, almost invisibly, self-trust erodes, and that erosion is not harmless. In relationships, this pattern often hides behind familiarity, a partner who constantly corrects, a friend who frames criticism as concern, a family member who turns every conversation into a comparison. Because it feels normal, it goes unquestioned. But familiarity does not equal health. Many adults carry voices in their minds that were never theirs to begin with. Judgments absorbed long ago get mistaken for truth. In work environments, this behavior can be especially damaging. These individuals often position themselves as standards enforcers. They highlight mistakes publicly. They question competence indirectly. They use experience or authority as a shield. What they rarely do is empower. True leadership builds capacity. This behavior erodes it. Creativity fades in spaces where people feel evaluated instead of supported. Ironically, many people who put others down are deeply afraid of being replaced. Growth around them feels threatening, so instinctively they suppress it. Not always consciously, but consistently. Over time, the environment becomes tense, cautious, and quiet. People stop taking risks, and the cost is collective stagnation.
It's important to understand that this behavior is not confidence gone wrong. It is survival learned too early. Often, these individuals were not emotionally mirrored as children. Their feelings were minimized, their needs overlooked, so they learned to protect themselves by projecting strength. But strength without safety becomes armor, and armor is heavy. Underneath that armor is often a deep sense of inadequacy, a belief that if they stop performing, they will disappear. So they keep performing. They perform intelligence, they perform dominance, they perform indifference, and they measure their worth by how much space they occupy compared to others. This is why silence feels threatening to them. Silence forces self-reflection, and self-reflection brings them face to face with what they've been avoiding, so they fill the space with judgment. They interrupt, they one-up, they reposition themselves as more informed, more capable, more experienced. Disagreement doesn't feel like dialogue to them. It feels like danger. People who are secure don't need to dominate conversations. They don't need to win every interaction. They don't need to correct others constantly. Secure people are not threatened by differing opinions. They can sit in silence without feeling erased. In contrast, people who put others down often struggle deeply with emotional stillness. Understanding this dynamic does not mean excusing it. Empathy does not require self-erasure. You can recognize the psychology behind the behavior without allowing it access to you. Because while their wounds may explain their actions, they do not justify the impact. So what do you do when you recognize this pattern? First, you stop personalizing it. Their behavior is not a reflection of your value. It is a reflection of their unmet needs. Second, you observe instead of react. Reaction feeds the dynamic. Observation weakens it. People who rely on dominance need emotional response to feel effective. When they don't get it, the strategy loses power. Third, you strengthen your internal anchor. The stronger your sense of self, the less their words land. Not because you become numb, but because you become rooted. You don't need to prove yourself to someone who is still trying to prove themselves to the world. One of the hardest truths to accept is that not everyone wants mutual respect. Some people want control disguised as connection, and when you stop offering that control, relationships may shift. They may accuse you of changing. In a way, they're right. You changed because you stopped shrinking.
This is often the moment of clarity. Those who value you will adjust. Those who needed you small will resist. This is not loss, it is alignment. The deeper truth behind this behavior is simple but uncomfortable. People who put others down are not powerful. They are people in pain who learned the wrong language for it. They didn't learn how to ask for reassurance. They learned how to take it. They didn't learn how to sit with uncertainty. They learned how to dominate it. You are not responsible for carrying that pain. Your presence does not need to be earned. Your voice does not need to be approved. And your worth does not need to be negotiated. The most powerful response to someone who tries to diminish you is not confrontation, it is grounded presence, standing fully in who you are, without explanation, without apology, and without leaving yourself behind. When you stop playing below, the power dynamic collapses quietly on its own.